My name is Jim Gitney, CEO of Group50. We're strategy and supply chain subject matter experts. Today we're going to talk about managing your way through 2020 and beyond. Managing your way through 2020 has been difficult, as everyone knows. And managing your way through the balance of the year and on into 2021 is going to be just as interesting because there are so many things we don't know. And that given that, we should plan for the worst. We should create strategies and tactics that allow us to plan for the worst and establish trigger points that allow us to change our direction inside of our business as we find out more information. The way forward is really clear, isn't it? Uncertainty and volatility are going to be extremely high levels for the next 12, 18, 24 months. Some of the things we do know are that airlines are down 80% to pre-pandemic levels. Various industries, yours for sure, has seen either significant increases in volume, no changes, or significant decreases. We do know that government funding has dried up, and it's unclear when or if we'll see any additional stimulus from the US government or even global governments. Companies are finding that stay-at-home workers are more productive. And the data that we're getting on a daily basis is more confusing than ever. The Purchasing Managers Index is up to 53.1%, which means an expansion in manufacturing. But that's from pandemic lows. And the US deficit's projected to be at $1.07 trillion. The unemployment rate today was announced that it was at 8.4%. But if you dig into the details a little further, you'll find that of the 1.3 million jobs added, 400,000 of them were for census workers. And we know that those are short-term jobs. And the other piece that's interesting is that if you look even a little further, you'll find that the unemployment rate for people who were full-time but are now working part-time and are unemployed is at 14.2%. The OECD single wave forecast for GDP is for the US to go down 7.7% and to grow 4.1% in 2021. That's far worse than what's happening globally. And so if you're a manufacturer in a global market, you'll find that the markets that you serve will be uneven in their growth. And you'll notice that I said single wave. If there's a second wave, the OECD predicts that it's going to be as much as 25% worse than what these numbers predict. The biggest challenge we all have is that the US economy, its GDP is made up of spending by consumers. 68% of the GDP in the US is made up by consumers. And given all the uncertainty, the kicking the can down the road around eviction notices, the lack of clarity around unemployment numbers, the fact that stimulus is gone, people are going to start bringing their spending back to cover their basic necessities. That's going to reverberate throughout the entire economy and perhaps make that 7.7% number even worse. Give you a little perspective around what's happening in various industries. You can see in this chart, the light green bar is what we are really focused on because that's the change in spending between Q4 of 2019 and Q2 of 2020. You can see that food and beverage consumption is up. Other non-durable goods are up slightly. Recreational goods and vehicles are up. And that's primarily driven by the fact that people are vacationing regionally rather than traveling around the world or traveling long distances to go on vacation. But other durable goods in the durable goods category are down 23%. And that has significant implications on businesses across the United States. Transportation, healthcare, recreation, food services, and accommodations are down by pretty hefty numbers. Every industry is going to have a different recovery model, and non-essential goods are going to come back more slowly than essential goods. It's estimated that between 10 and 20% of businesses are going to go out of business, and that has a huge impact on US GDP. What's more interesting is if there is a second wave later this year, we're going to find that number could grow as high as 30%. I guess we should all be happy that if we didn't invest in cruise lines or WeWork. Now, what's happening in the global supply chain? There's been a tremendous amount of disruption. Things are starting to get better, but we've seen with our clients lead times that have increased between 20 and 300%. And that's depending on the industry. Apple's been impacted just like the local manufacturer or machine shop who saw castings, aluminum castings, go from 7 to 8 weeks to 7 months. So it's really important for the leadership teams of middle market companies to understand their supply chains better than they ever have, to see what's happening and where the risks are inside that supply chain. Because they may just wake up one morning and find out that an upstream supplier has significantly increased its lead time, as is shown in the blue line, or worse yet, they've gone out of business. And as we all know, if we lose one critical component, it's very possible we might not be able to make our products at all. So it's important that middle market companies leverage their supply chain technology for better performance, which is something every middle market company can do, and that they do a true supply chain risk assessment. It's important because they need to do two things. They need to understand the resiliency of their supply chain. At the same time, they need to focus on freeing up working capital in the event that a worst case happens, or in the event that they want to spend more money on market-facing activities, or be opportunistic with an acquisition. The ability to modify product configurations and business models to changing demand patterns is critical inside of middle market companies. One of the things that we've done with many of our clients is what we call scenario planning. If you look at this chart, you'll see that this horizontal line in the graph is based on 0%. That is based on the budget that they set for last year. And if you'll notice in this curve, and this is a chart for an actual client of ours, if you'll notice in this curve, they saw a significant downturn in business. But because of things they did around reconfiguring products, redesigning their supply chain, and significantly increasing their market-facing activities, they're finding that they actually are going to beat last October's budget. Now, we put together the strategic plan for this company in the third quarter of last year and have made significant changes to it in 2020. But you'll notice these horizontal brown lines. And what we've done is we've created a series of scenario plans that says that if their sales get up to this point, they're going to take a certain set of actions that will allow them to move to this point, which will incur another set of actions, and et cetera, et cetera. We define these as trigger points. Now, what I said earlier was that we have no idea what's going to happen in the next 18 to 24 months. But it's incumbent on us as leaders. We have to create a 2-year revenue forecast for our industry and for our business. And the reality is that creating this forecast is not about being right or wrong. It's about being prepared for various scenarios. If we have a second wave, we could find that this line could drop down again. And there's another set of scenarios that have been developed based on that worst case model. Identify trigger points that will cause you to take additional actions. Use a building block approach. And again, stay very close to your customers, their strategies, and their forecasts. We're truly recognizing that all of us are in the same boat. We all have uncertainty around our business. And it's incredibly important that we understand upstream and downstream what those issues are. And then we work closely with our suppliers and our customers to create a scenario that we can all live with. Perfect example is a supplier who is attempting to free up working capital and a customer who wants to push more of that working capital back to the supplier to free up their own working capital. Those two strategies don't work together. And so it's really important that you work closely with your suppliers and your customers to understand what their issues are, what their risks are, and what their strategies are. Lastly, I'm going to talk under scenario planning. It's important to fully understand the changing buying patterns and buying habits of your consumer. And it doesn't matter whether it's a B2B company or a B2C company. E-commerce is up 50%. B2B companies are significantly increasing the amount of buying they're doing over the internet and with their suppliers, as well as consumers. So if you want to impact the sales of one of your B2B customers, it's important that you figure out an e-commerce strategy that draws customers to them and educates them on the value proposition of your product. Far too many middle market companies aren't paying attention to the importance of that strategy. One of the things that's incredibly important to recognize is that significant emotional and financial events like this create an accelerated change management environment. Now, I don't want to sound callous, but at the end of the day, when things are really going well, we as people, as humans, as employees, don't see a good reason for changing things up. In this kind of environment, because it's been both a significant emotional event and a significant financial event, we find that the relationship between the severity of an emotional event and the willingness to embrace change to be exponentially related. And so if I think about clients that we have, we see that they are in this range right here. They are more willing than ever to make change. That's changes to business products, that's changes to business processes, that's changes to products, that's changes to services, and that's changes to organization structure. Everyone is suffering from the same event. And so it's an opportunity to think about things that you need to do differently. There's 3 phases to managing your way through 2020 and beyond. Stabilization. Most of you have stabilized your business. And you're starting to see some growth. Potentially, you're starting to see some growth as a result of that stabilization. The next phase is reconfiguration. Redesigning the way you do business, redesigning the products that you sell, adding additional services, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment, and then recovery. And if you think about those 3 phases, it all is part of your strategic planning effort. We've talked about scenario planning. One of the things we're doing with clients is what we call an after-action review. Think about the last 5 or 6 months. What are the things that you've done differently? And I'm not talking minor differences, I'm talking major differences. It's likely that you've made decisions in much, much shorter periods of time. It's likely that you've involved your employees like you never have before. It's likely that you have a large portion of your workforce working remotely. And so it's important to get your team together and talk about what are the things that you've done differently and which one of those things you want to keep for the future. Because that's part of the reconfiguration process. You've got to free up working capital as part of stabilization, and we'll talk about what you're going to do with that in a moment. It's really important that you increase market effectiveness. there are reports that companies that cut back on their market-facing activities, internet, advertising, marketing, new product development, which we all put in the bucket of market-facing effectiveness. Companies who cut back on those sales did not see the same increase in sales or the same volume of sales as companies who spent more money on their market-facing activities. Now, as I talked about the reconfiguration process, organization design is incredibly important. As you start thinking about keeping workers, allowing workers to stay home, and you believe that they're more productive, that's going to have an impact on your organization design. You need to improve your supply chain resiliency. One of the things that we recommend as part of a reconfiguration process is a fix or exit strategy. I'm sure that every company has products that don't generate the gross margin that they'd like, and customers that don't generate the gross margin that they like. Stand back, take an objective view of your product portfolios and your customer portfolio, and fix or exit those lower margin customers and products. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go out and you wholesale stop doing business with a customer before you sit down and have a conversation with them about the need to increase price in order to bring the margins up. I've done 11 operational and financial restructurings, and in each one of those, we've gone in and actually went and sat with customers about their profitability and about the profitability of the products we sell to them. And it's surprising how many of those customers have been getting a great deal for a long time and are willing to take price increases. You've got to restructure and transform your business model. I think we can all agree that the way we do business, the way we did business prior to the pandemic, is no longer going to be the way we're going to do business in the future. Competitors are going to disappear, products are going to disappear, services are going to disappear. It's really important that we not only stay close to our customers, but our markets, so that we understand how to reconfigure our product and service portfolios in a way that is best suited for the future way of business. Several of our clients, we've done work around identifying weak competitors and markets, and in one case actually created what we call a pounce strategy. And they were able to take some fairly significant business away from their competitors because they had a strong balance sheet. Those are the kinds of things you need to think through as you recreate your 2020 and 2021 strategies. Lastly, prepare to be opportunistic. It's important that you understand what's happening in your marketplace and be ready to either acquire a distressed competitor, acquire a product line from a distressed competitor, or take advantage of poor performance in the marketplace to increase your market share. For all of this, you need to plan, define the worst case, and plan from there. Innovative leadership teams will rise to the top in their sectors. And I'll share some data with you in a moment. And I truly believe that tweaking the business model will not be enough. You need to think reconfiguration or transformation. And that's not only transformation in the way you go to market and your market effectiveness, that may also include digital transformation. Stand back, take a look at the investments that you've made in your technology backbone, especially the technology that supports your supply chain, which we call quote to cash, and see how you can better leverage that investment in order to improve the performance of your supply chain. Let's talk about change management for a second. Remember that chart from a few slides ago that said that the willingness to change is exponentially related to the significance of the emotional event? Let's talk about some of those things. You've already attempted, or maybe have, taken advantage of every dime the government is offering. That's gone. Hopefully you took the cash to the bank, you spent it wisely, you spent it on your employees. You want to now take as much cost out as possible, or maybe you already have. And you want to free up working capital for market-facing activities. These are the things you need to focus on in the stabilization piece of the three-phase approach. One of the other things you need to do is to communicate your tactics and strategies to your people frequently. Every one of us are in the same boat. Our employees are fearful of the future. They're uncertain about the status of the business that they're working in. Certainly if they're in restaurants or hotels or on the airlines. Those are the very obvious industries that are impacted, where there's a tremendous amount of fear of the future. But it's that way in every business. And so you want to make sure to engage your people and telling them what you're doing, how you're planning the future, and allow them to be involved. What we have found in a lot of the Kaizen and value stream mapping work that we've done is that when employees can really step up to the next level in their ability to help redesign business processes, create new products and services. So it's really important that you deeply involve the employees inside your business. But don't forget suppliers and customers, because they're going to have a lot of opportunity and a lot of ideas on how to make your business better. 4 months ago, when I did the first version of this, I thought hiring was going to be easy. It was going to be easier. After all, there are over 20 million people unemployed, and that gives you a huge base of people to hire from. As it turns out, hiring has not gotten easier, it's gotten harder. So be opportunistic. If you have some key positions inside your business that need to be filled, attempt to do it now, because when the recovery does occur, it's even going to become more difficult to hire good people. Take advantage of the fertile change management environment. And always remember that empathy towards your employees, suppliers, and customers is incredibly important. I've gotten phone calls and had conversations with people that I haven't spoken to in years. Why? Because we're all searching for that little bit of information that's going to help us manage the future better. Your suppliers, your customers, and your employees are no different. In case you can't see it, the cartoon in the bottom left-hand corner says, generally we don't provide separate wake-up calls for teddy bears. Why not? That's what your customer wants. And you stay close to your customers and your suppliers and build stronger relationships. You might find that there are things that you're not doing today that you can be doing that will make your relationship even stronger. Supply chain planning is more critical than ever. With all of our clients, we've gone to weekly sprints. Now you say, wow, sales, inventory, and operational planning processes are complex. They take a lot of work. Well, we can make it simpler. We've made it simpler so that every week what we're talking about is, here's our plan. What things do we know that have changed? Perhaps the bankruptcy of a customer. Perhaps a disruption in the supply chain. Perhaps a significant increase in cost on a component. What things have changed that are going to impact orders and our ability to be able to satisfy customer orders in the future? That's the kind of conversation we're recommending to our clients that they have on a weekly basis. You want to limit the cuts to new product development and market-facing activities in light of the changing buying habits. Now, almost everything we buy now is coming from Amazon. I don't believe that my wife is going to change her buying habits significantly when all of the retailers open back up and she's more comfortable in going out in the public. All of us, again, that's an example of the fear that we all face about the future. Rethink your product mix, work hard on scenario planning, and be opportunistic in case an acquisition of either a competitor or an adjacent company or a company that offers adjacent products comes along. In conclusion, I do believe you need to do more than just tweak your business. The second phase of reconfiguration is incredibly important. And notice that I'm saying reconfiguration and not restructuring. There are going to be companies who are going to need to be restructured because their balance sheets can't support lower levels of sales. I actually believe that there's going to be a buying frenzy later on this year, but perhaps first quarter of next year, of distressed companies. And that's because many companies didn't have strong balance sheets coming into the pandemic. Take the time to rethink your 2020 and your 2021 strategies. It's not a simple exercise. I told somebody the other day, a client actually, that I never implemented something I didn't know. Don't be afraid to reach out to strategy experts and supply chain experts to help build that base of ideas that are going to be appropriate for your business in 2020 and 2021. You might find that some of those ideas will be the difference between failure and success, or continued marginal performance. Significantly improve your business and supply chain resiliency. That is so important, because after you've done all of the work of reconfiguring your products and services and making new commitments to your customers, the last thing you want is to disappoint them because you didn't understand the risks inside your supply chain. Identify what you've done differently and implement those best practices on a go-forward basis. This is incredibly important. Agility is also important. Innovators and transformers will perform 15 to 20% better than their competitors. And that was from a McKinsey study back after the downturn in 08 and 09. And it's actually, that study has been replicated in every downturn that we've had over the last 6 or 7 cycles. If you want to learn more about our thoughts on reopening your business, we've created a series of blog articles that talk about many of the things that we've talked about during this video. Group 50, I'm Jim Gitney. We are supply chain and strategy subject matter experts. We've worked in a number of different industries. Our specialty is middle market companies, and we have helped them significantly improve their performance during this downturn. Founded in 2004 with 22 consultants, all of us are former operating executives. So when we sit with you, we've likely been in your seat. So we're not only a consultant, but we're also a peer. And we can share with you best practices from around the world, ranging from startups to Fortune 50 companies, where we've all come from. I'm Jim Gitney, the CEO of Group50. Thank you for listening to this video, and I wish all of you the best of luck in managing your